Welcome to episode 1 of the OCOM Podcast, Modern Medical Education, where we gather experts to discuss various topics in modern medical education, with the focus of today's show being on getting into medical school and medical school admissions. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Hasty. I'm the Dean and the Chief Academic Officer of OCOM, the Orlando College of Osteopathic Medicine, and I have 3 awesome guest hosts with me today. The first is Stacy Ramkisoon Udit, OCOM Director of Admissions. Welcome, Stacy.
Thank you so much for having us today.
Yeah. So tell me what's new with admissions at OCOM.
So we're super excited. We are in our first full cycle. We started in April, and so we're doing our in-person interviews right now. We are doing in-person and virtual options, so we have a hybrid option. So we're super excited to get our students here, and we recently welcomed our inaugural class, so we're really excited to have a full class here.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. Welcome, Stacy. And also with us is Krista Tominski. She's the OCOM recruiter. Welcome, Krista. Tell us what's new with the recruitment at OCOM.
Hi, thanks for having us. Well, we're really kicking up recruiting season right now as we approach the fall. We've got tons of events coming up with undergrad getting back into the swing of things. We're starting our connections with the pre-med clubs at the local universities, bringing them out to the school. So definitely a busy time in recruiting right now.
Excellent. Thanks. And also with us is a member of the inaugural class of 2028 of OCOM. It's Leo Guerra, OMS1. Welcome, Leo.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So how are things going, Leo? How's the being in the inaugural class at OCOM?
Honestly, it's everything I could hope for and more. So even just taking off like your stethoscope for the first time and like hearing blood pressure or anything like that, or even just like learning the diseases, why we want to learn them, or like basically becoming a doctor, first step to becoming a doctor.
Excellent. Yeah. If I could go back and do it all over again, I would in a second. The path to becoming a physician, it's so transformative. It actually changes. It changes how you think. I think it changes almost everything that you do. And, I love everything about, becoming a physician and, of course, being a physician. Although, I tell this to medical students, one time they asked me, is it better, on this side or the other side? Oh, it's so much better on this side.
A little bit less stressful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, we'll welcome you all. The first thing, I was wanting to talk about is, some of the medical school admissions dynamics, because we have a director of admissions, we have a recruiter, we have a first year medical student just went through the process. And, of course, going back recently in 2021, we had the highest number of admissions to medical school ever, right? They called it the Fauci effect. Some people called it, I think there were a lot of different reasons why we had an increase in 2021. And then since then, we've either had a plateau or decrease in admissions to medical schools over the last few years. We still have, huge excess in number of applicants to, the number of medical school positions there are for first-year medical students. But I guess one of the questions, I figured we'd talk about is, what are the effects that you're seeing on the admissions process that now that we're seeing a little either decrease or plateau in admissions, certainly since 2021?
Yeah, so for us, specifically at OCOM, I don't think we have any data, right? So we started last year with our inaugural class. We launched in September. And so we haven't had a full medical cycle yet. We're currently in our first cycle from 24 to 25. Once we have some more data, I think we'll be more specific to OCOM. But outside of that, I think there's just a lot of resources that are showing that there's medical school bills are expensive, right? With the interest rates and everything, the student debt that's coming out is really going to impact how many students want to take on that debt. So I think that's one of the biggest things that we are facing.
That's a good point. The economy has always been one of those predictors of how many people goes to medical school. So, if you look at, medical school, in the .com bubble, we actually had a decrease in medical school applicants. And then, then you had the bubble burst and maybe a slight bump up. And then you had the recession. We actually had a significant bump up in the number of applicants with the Great Recession. And then, but I guess you could probably make the argument the economy must be doing pretty well because, it's either decreasing or plateauing recently. And of course, the other, interesting thing, of course, Krista knows this extremely well. We have a lot more medical schools than we used to. I mean, the osteopathic profession is growing almost tripled in size in the last 20 years. I think, it's the same thing's true with the allopathic or the USMD schools. although I have noticed there's been a decline in the number of Caribbean schools. I think we were up to about 56 at one point. Last count, I think it was about 49 Caribbean medical schools, and I hear that some of them are having some challenges too. So, but anyway, so yeah, so do you think we'll ever get to a stage where we actually have more medical school positions than applicants in your lifetime?
I hope not. I hope that's not a problem that we would have in admissions, but I do, with everybody trying to get more students coming into their programs, they're increasing cohort numbers, increasing programs, satellite campuses. That might be a reality, coming soon.
I'll tell you one thing that I've noticed that it's been so different than, when I was applying to medical school. So, so I graduated in 2000 for medical school. I was applying in 1996. Or, I guess, 95, 96 for the 96, entry, fall 96. I'll tell you back then, heck, there was like no marketing to medical students. There certainly was no recruiter. I mean, I don't think there was a recruiter for any medical school in America because, they just opened up the floodgates. All these applications came in. But, we actually have had, historic highs in the number of applicants to medical schools, certainly in 2021 and, even, leading up to 2021. So, it is interesting, some of the dynamics and how medical schools are really, competing for more. So, well, let me ask you this. There's this thing called the MELT, right? So, this is a word that I discovered, I guess over the last 10 years or 15 years or whatever. It's sort of like lingo for admissions in medical schools. And I think, undergraduates use that a little bit too, but, and MELT is really the term used for folks that, apply to medical school, they get accepted, they enroll, they deposit, and then they unenroll over time. And, we've actually seen in recent years, or at least what I've been hearing, a huge number of increase in the MELT to medical schools, nationwide. And we certainly saw MELT here at OCOM, for our inaugural year. So, any thoughts on MELT? Yeah.
MELT gives me heartburn. But it is definitely, I think, students are now, our applicants are now able to apply to a wider variety of schools because of the hybrid or the virtual options of interviews. It's now becoming more accessible. So they have more options. Their pools are bigger, so they're casting a wider net. And so when they're accepting and taking spots on wait list for 10 schools, that's going to affect all of those 10 schools. So I think it's just kind of the nature of where we are with virtual interviews. And, I think it's in the benefit of the students and the applicants that are coming. They get more choices and more options, but it's really hard for a school perspective. And I think we see the MELT a lot happening after May. OCOMIS is the product that we use for all of our applications. And all schools that use OCOMIS all have to do the mandatory reporting, not just OCOM, not just one particular school. So we all get an email that tells us all the students that have multiple seats, and that's where MELT really comes from, is after May, is when we start seeing that, one student's holding 10 seats. Now all those schools are scrambling to see if they can fill that spot.
Yeah. I know this year, I think there was, I'm not sure if it was one of our students or not, but they actually had 6 enrolled, deposited.
Yeah.
And I'd have to think it's probably thousands of dollars, right? Some of these schools, I mean, last year we didn't even have a deposit. This year, I think we're charging a whopping $100, for deposit. But, some of these schools are like $2,000.
I've heard up to 5.
Yeah.
Wow.
As high as 5,000 is what I've heard on some of the applications for the deposits.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think about that, Leo? What are you hearing out there? Why are students enrolling in all these schools? Is it just, because they can't make a decision, or is it just they just want to, leave as many options open to last minute as possible? Or,
Yeah, I think it's because a lot of, at least from a student perspective, med school admissions is very, I would say, behind a curtain. Like, we don't necessarily know what's going on behind the scenes or what could happen when you get accepted in one. We don't know down the line, maybe another acceptance comes along the way. So it's like, if we had sort of like a cohesion and understanding of like what schools are accepting us or what things, it leads to a better decision that way. I think also along the lines of the process is very long as well. We could have like months where we not hear anything and then we randomly get an acceptance. So it's kind of like discordant just to know where you're going to be ending up in a couple of months.
I mean, that's fair, right? Because if you get the acceptance, the first school you get, you're probably going to take it because that may be your only medical school, right?
Exactly.
But then, to me, I guess, the challenge is, then you get a school that you kind of like a little bit better, maybe the next week or 2 weeks later or a month later, and then you put a deposit on there. But why not tell the first one that, that you're not coming there? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but then again, I mean, because we're seeing students not telling us, right? Once they decide to make another, commitment. And
One trend that's interesting that I've seen too, just being a lurker on the internet, is a lot of students rely on others to make the decision for them. So Reddit, Student Doctor Network, hey guys, I've got this acceptance, I have 24 hours, help me. And just watching the conversations and what are said about other schools, I think that's why it's so important that we educate and get our message out about what we're known for and what makes us unique so that we can kind of control those conversations on the back end. But yes, a lot of students out there depending on other people to help them make the decision, which I understand,
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, I always feel bad for like all these folks on the wait list, right? Because, you're sitting there like wait list purgatory. You may have made one of those expensive deposits at, the school that you really wanted, and you're just waiting there. And then boom, melt season comes in. They come out with a list of all those, what they call dual enrollment. I don't know, what do you call 6 enrollment or whatever,
Multiple
right?
enrollment.
Multiple enrollment. and then all of a sudden all these spots open up, and now that you're getting multiple offers in May or even June and stuff like that. So yeah, it's tricky. So Leo, let me ask you this. You just came through the medical school admissions process, and and now you're a first year medical student. But tell me, what was your experience applying for medical school this last cycle, and what are you hearing out there amongst current medical school applicants?
Yeah. So, geez, it was a long process, my application. Like I said, it's basically a year-long process of the whole application, from the start of, really sending your primary application to secondaries to interview. And so along those process, you're just trying to figure out, how do I get to the next step? So a lot of students are looking at things like what can set them apart at different stages. Now, what I hear from, I guess, just from other students and things like that in terms of like selecting a school, they're kind of looking at a couple factors on what sets them to go down a particular medical school path. What I do notice is a lot of it seems very similar. And so sometimes they'll come down to like a single decision between another school. And that kind of just leaves two schools hanging to understand, is this student coming here or not?
Right. Yeah, excellent. And Krista, you're out there talking to prospective medical students literally every single day.
Yeah.
So, what are you hearing out there right now?
I would say the biggest question I get, I do a lot of tours and like open houses, so we get a lot of organic Q&A and like, what do I do to make myself competitive applicant, or what should I put in my application? I always give the same advice to just be yourself, because you can tell the student that has rehearsed every single answer and it's almost like robotic, versus the student that's really passionate about becoming a doctor and things like that. And I think that shows more of your character than a rehearsed answer that you maybe went through training to go through. So be yourself. I always hype them up to let them know the way I'm talking to you is the way that your interviewees are going to talk to you. Like, it's very relaxed. No one's out to get you. We all just want you to be the best doctor that you can be. And we're all here to help you accomplish that. So no stress. It's going to be fun. You're going to love it here. Like, just be yourself. So
yeah, and that's a good point, right? You want to be authentic when you're applying for medical school, but you also want to be able to answer the questions about who you are, why you want to go to medical school, and those type of things, right? Mm-hmm. So it's always the balance, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Have that preparation, but also just be genuine and honest is really hard for a lot of people.
I've interviewed, I bet you thousands and thousands of people for medical schools over the years, and it's and I get that thing that rehearse, right? You haven't finished the question and they're already like,
They already have an answer.
Answered. It sounds like robotic almost.
Yeah.
And then I've had these folks that literally flew across the country for an in-person interview, and they're right in front of you. And I'm like, okay, why do you want to be a physician? And they kind of look at you like, well, gee, that's such a crazy question. Right? You think you would at least like kind of think about some of those most common questions, right? Why do you want to come here for medical school? What kind of physician do you think you might want to be? All those type of things. So, but I'll tell you, it's an amazing opportunity, right, to interview folks for medical school, because you're truly, in some cases, you're almost kind of making a decision who's going to be a physician, right? And it's a huge responsibility, for the faculty, the staff, Yeah, actually, I'll tell Leo, so we actually, I tell the faculty and the staff, my suggestion, recommendation, request from them is to use the mom test, right? Never accept anybody in medical school that you wouldn't want to take care of your own mom. And that works if they like their mom, right? So, hopefully they like their mom. So, anyway. Well, let me ask you this. I think some of you have seen this already. I wrote an article, a couple months ago, is it time for a medical school match? Because it's, from what I'm seeing, it's tough on the students. They're, just like you said, having to put these deposits in on schools, and they'll deposit on the first school that goes through. From the medical school side of things, they have all these folks on the wait list that really want to come in, and then they're waiting sort of in limbo until the dual enrollment list comes out, and they melt off, and then you offer new applicants, and it's kind of a stressful thing. And it just seems to me, from a marketplace thing, there's probably a better way. And so I asked in this article, should we consider like a match like they do for residency programs? And heck, they've been doing this since 1952 because they had these challenges back in the 40s and 50s, and they recognized it, and they actually put in the match, which I would say is highly successful. Most people, I think, are very satisfied with the residency match process. And and having been on the GME side of things, the match works pretty darn good. And of course, there's a scramble process that goes with it. But I don't know. I'd be interested in hear what you guys think about, should we have a medical school match? So I don't know who wants to.
Yeah, well, for me, I came from GME as well, right? So the match was something that we always prepared for. And, that was our, it really, I think, saved a lot of our programs, because I did it for not only for residency, but also for fellowships. And the fellowships that did not have a match, some years they went unfilled. And that was really hard for, clinical, for bringing clinical continuity for our patients. And so that was a challenge at times. And so, we were able to institute some new matches for fellowships, and it developed. And I think it's a win-win for a lot of people. And I think it takes away that the anxiety of students all, waiting to see when that time's going to come. Because if we do a match, it's going to be a couple months before everyone's going to get the same notification. Everyone has the same time to plan. Versus if you, like the way we're doing it now, they have, we can call people the week of orientation and say, you got 2 days to get things together and come, and here's your seat. And so I think it kind of helps with that planning process for a lot of people if we do have something in place that would allow for, a match process.
Excellent.
Yeah, I could say from even from a student perspective, it helps eliminate sort of that anxiety around the wait list, because you would be waiting for, it could be anywhere from weeks to months to find out the final result. Like you said, a couple days before to even know, like, hey, you need to come to our school pretty soon. We have a spot open for you. So I think from like an administrative burden, it helps a lot. From a student burden, it helps with at least like the mental health aspect of like that wait process.
Absolutely. And I think it also removes that the financial burden of multiple seats, and doing multiple deposits and all of that. I think it really would help, in a lot of different aspects. Does it come with its own set of challenges? Absolutely. What does that look like? How do we implement that through the whole system? And, everybody would have to participate. What does a scramble look like? There's a lot of questions, but I do think the time is now to start a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I've heard from some of the medical school deans, I've had so many of them come up to me. I only had one of them that wasn't enamored with the idea, but the vast majority of the ones I've been talking to anecdotally said, "Oh, it's a great idea, but good luck getting all the medical school deans, both on the DO side and the MD side, to agree that that's a good thing." Although it seemed like the consensus would be that it's super positive. So
yeah.
So. Anyway, well, we will see.
We'll
actually,
that conversation up.
You heard it here first. OCOM Podcast, episode 1.
Although actually, Leo was telling me that it made its way around Twitter with the Sheriff Sodium guy or whatever his name is. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, before we started the show, I noticed on Twitter, actually, when that was first published back in June, July, roughly, it actually made its way around Twitter and around the circles. So if it's making it in the pre-med space, it's definitely making it in the administrative space of med schools. So
yeah, I hope so. Actually, one of the former board members for NRMP actually had some conversations with the leadership at NRMP, and which is the the match they call it. I think is
Right.
actually their trademark, right? But they apparently have a match that could potentially work for this. That's that they're using for other things and stuff like that. But anyway, well, hopefully hopefully the idea takes off. So, yeah. So anyway, well, thanks. One question that's come up over the years, and this is more for Krista, is that we have this abundance of applicants to medical school in relations to the positions. Why is it that nearly every medical school has a recruiter now? Years ago, I mean, there was no recruiter and stuff like that. But nowadays everybody has recruiters. Actually, I just heard of a medical school that now has 2 recruiters. I haven't heard anybody that has 3. Maybe there are some out there.
Yeah.
But anyway, so put the plug in. Why do we need recruiters nowadays? Yeah.
Well, first and foremost, I think sometimes there's a misconception of what a recruiter is, or you're just sitting behind a table handing out an OCOM pen and moving on with your day. I think although recruiting is a team effort and everyone at the school is there to help with that, it is nice to have like one point person. It's a lot about fostering relationships, and in itself, that is a full-time job. So between our pre-med advisors, we have school organizations that we're focused on. We have high schools reaching out that want to come. It's social media marketing, because not only are we focused on the pre-med advisors and the undergraduate colleges that we're targeting, but also the students. The students, respectfully, reading articles is not really what they're looking for. They want to see Instagram reels and videos and educational things. They want to see a day in the life of an OCOM student. So all of that stuff is very time consuming, and I think it makes the most sense to have someone kind of spearheading all of that, just to keep the message consistent and make sure that all the students are getting the same experience, but that we're also fostering those relationships with the other important folks as well.
Right. Now, I liked one word that you said about, I like everything you said, but especially about the relationships. And, I'll tell you, I didn't, when I was a first year medical student, I don't think I would have said this, but I feel it more now than I ever did in my entire life. The quality of our personal lives are dependent upon the quality of our relationships. And I also think that the quality of an organization is dependent upon the quality of the relationships that organization has. So, like you said, with, the applicants that come in, the pre-health advisors and, those type of things. And let's face it, I mean, we have, I'll brag right now. I mean, we have, I think, the finest medical school faculty and staff of any medical school in the nation. And, what an incredibly positive culture, that I think we have now. But, to have somebody out there, showing the positive culture that we have, I think, sort of tells the story. So, I'm a big fan for the recruiter. Yeah, I mean, I think just from a pragmatic standpoint, I saw these schools that didn't, they were slow to adapt recruiters over the years, and they were sending out, coordinators, and then the coordinators, the missions coordinators, heck, they had a day job, and they were like out at the health fairs over the weekends or whenever, and they just didn't get a chance to do their day jobs. And of course, it's a different level of expertise, right? Coordinating the applications for admissions is very, very different than, basically, developing the relationships with the pre-health advisors and the pre-medical students, and also telling the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got to tell, every medical school's got a different curriculum, every medical school's got a different admissions process, and it's complicated, right? It's a complicated decision for medical students, and then you have the whole geography thing, and of course they come from various backgrounds, so yeah. And here we have a unique situation because we're within 100 miles of the top 3 of the top 10 feeder schools in America in terms of medical school feeder schools, right? So you have University of Central Florida, University of Florida, and University of South Florida, and not to mention, we have all these incredible schools throughout the state of Florida that are great feeder schools, and and this year we had 61% of our inaugural class came from Florida, right? So, which is good, right? We'd love even more, right?
Yeah.
So that's great. So, Leo, talking about pre-health advisors and, the undergraduate, if you could just say a little bit about how the pre-health advisors impacted your decision on, which medical school that you ultimately attended, and, how that helped you get into medical school.
Yeah, I would say it helped me tremendously, even just coming up with a list of even 10, 15 schools or however many I would want to apply to. and saying what's different about each school, location, what are the benefits, or what are the things that the school offers that may not necessarily be something readily available that you can find. So I would say my advisors definitely helped me with like just honing in on what I should select that fit me well. Now for the ultimate decision, I think I emailed them quite a few times to be like, is this the right decision? Is this the right decision? And yeah, I would say it's very pivotal for a student to have a good advisor.
Yeah. And let me ask you, remind me where you went to undergraduate at?
Oh, I went to the University of Florida. So go
Oh, University of
Gators.
Florida. Okay. Excellent. And, did they do like prep sessions for, pre-med students, how to get into medical school and those type of things?
Oh yes, there was a wait list for even that. So yeah, they basically, once you get to like the interview stage, they'll practice like mock interviews. Like what do you do here at this situation? Let me throw you curveballs. Let me throw you the traditional questions and things like that. So they really prepped you to understand like how this process works, what happens at each process, how fast you should turn around certain things, and then really just how to set your best foot forward. So they're really, really crucial for the application.
And it doesn't surprise me because one of the top pre-health advisors in the nation, Bobby Knickerbocker, is there. I don't know if you ever got a chance to interact with her, but she's she's got an incredible reputation for high quality what she does. So top of her game. Yeah.
I still get emails from her all constantly, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm reminiscing.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for that. So talking about how things have changed, I think it's always interesting the impact of COVID, and certainly during COVID, everything switched over to Zoom interviews. I think 100% of medical schools went to Zoom interviews during COVID, right? And now we're actually seeing, I'd say the majority of them are transitioning back to hybrid. I know we did the statistics last year, and it wasn't over 50%, but I think this year the projection was over 50% of the schools were going back to hybrid interviews, meaning that they would have Zoom capabilities, and then they would have in-person options for those folks that chose to do it. And and then of course, there's some schools that have gone back to 100% only in-person options. And I do know that there have been some discussions about underrepresented students and those type of things. Having or financially disadvantaged students may not be able to fly out to interviews at every single school that accepts them for interviews and everything like that. So anyway, be interested in hearing what your thoughts are about, in-person versus Zoom interviews, and and why it makes a difference one way or the other.
Yeah, so for us, I think we are doing a hybrid this year, and we've had great feedback on both. Our interviews are scheduled all the way out until December. We're booking out in January at this point. So, our students do have a large interest in coming on campus. They want that full experience, and we're really happy that we can do that. But also there are students for a variety of reasons, that they can't come out, and, allowing them to have that virtual option, that same experience or a very similar experience is what our goal here at OCOM is. So we want to make sure that, they're getting a virtual tour, they're meeting with our students, and they're getting that same interaction as if they were in person. And so for us, we're trying to mirror both interview dates as closely as we can, because we really want to make sure that everybody has the same ability and inclusivity and equity throughout this whole process. Just because you can't take 20 days off to go for interviews from your job and your undergrad studies does not mean that you should not get the best school that you can go to.
Yeah. And how about you, Leo? Did you do any in person, or was it mostly Zoom last year for you?
So last year, the majority of them were Zoom, but there was a couple in-person interviews. I will say, from a student perspective, having like an in-person interview is just so exciting. Just coming to the school dressed in basically your suit and tie, and just like seeing the school, see where I would study one day, or even just like see how the school is, how the faculty is. Nothing beats just a genuine handshake. Now, I will agree with like the Zoom. The benefit of it is you can have a lot concurrently happening behind the scenes. Like you could have like one interview one day, and it's easier to manage like anything like from flights and stuff like that. But I will say I did prefer having an in-person interview.
Yeah. I agree too. And I mean, I think heck, for OCOM, it's probably better to have as many in person as possible. I swear, anytime somebody comes to OCOM and they see the facility, they get to meet the team in person, they see what's happening here. I mean, 100%, they're like sold. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's
Agreed.
probably like 100% retention or whatever of people that actually come for in person here, and we're like nice to them during the interview.
Yeah, we
and
absolutely
everything,
roll out the orange carpet, right?
yeah. Yeah. And we really do have orange carpet,
We do.
Leo's like, hey, why didn't I have that?
Actually, we did it for Welcome Day.
Yes, we
didn't
did have
Yeah.
that.
We did roll it out.
Yeah, a lot of orange, black, and white everywhere, and
We
I
love our
loved it.
orange.
Oh my gosh, the little Connect Four, the
Oh,
little
yeah.
orange and black pucks. Yeah, I love that so much.
Awesome. So anyway, one of the other things I think always fascinates me is the type of medical school interviews. And I remember, when I was a, early faculty member, early career, we had traditional interviews. So it'd be 3 faculty members with 1 medical student. And that was, across the country. I mean, that was the interview style. That was like sort of what everybody did. And then there's been, a lot of changes over the years, right? There are some medical schools that experimented with MMIs, which are multi-mini interviews, which basically where you send the applicant into the room with an actor. And it's a lot of times it's a non-medical case where they go through the little scenarios. So I've seen that. And in Canada, I think they're still using a lot of the MMIs, although the evidence I think is a little bit on the sketchier side for that. And I know that some schools have done it, and then they've gone back to other type of interviews. I know that some schools have kind of experimented with video submitted interviews as opposed to interactive interviews. And then it seems like the predominance out there is what we're currently doing is multi-station interviews where we do one-on-one interviews, but in 2 stations, and some places do it 3 stations and stuff like that. So anyway, so I'd be interested in hearing what Leo had encountered, and then of course what Stacy and Krista, what your thoughts are on these different type of interview formats.
Sure.
Yeah, I will say I had exposure to the video interview that you submit prior, and then I also had exposure to the MMIs, so the mini med school interviews as well. I will say that the difference on how you prep for them are radically different on how you approach like things that you focus on in the interview. So I think that's also a thing from a student perspective. What should you focus on before going into that setting? At least from the 2 I had most exposure with is pretty much the Zoom interview, at least since a lot of schools have been shifting to that.
And what was your preference out of the different types of interviews?
More so just one-on-one, just being able to talk to a person for long form, just having your thoughts like explained. Like when they ask you a question, you can complete your whole thought.
Did you have any of the 3-to-1 ratio interviews?
Oh, I did as well. Those 2. So those were fun because it was kind of like talking to multiple people at once, and like it just felt like honestly just an organic conversation between many people.
Yeah. And so you actually like that one, the traditional interview.
Yeah, actually, between the 2, they're very. The thing is, I like both of them. The difference between them is just really how many people you interact with, and really bounce off of each other.
Yeah. I will tell you, when I was a medical school faculty member, it's fun to be in there with 3 other your colleagues or 2 other your colleagues and interviewing a student. But it also, like for some of the applicants, it was like super intimidating. You have like these 3 medical school professors like doing it. I'll tell you, and unfortunately, I saw more than one applicant cry during the interview and stuff. It was very stressful for them, and of course there was like super group think, right? Because let's face it, you could do subtle things like, say positive things about them, and then next thing you know, well, he likes that person. I like that person too. And, there's that group think. And I know there was that one study that showed that the traditional interview was like as good as a flip of a coin. But I can tell you, as an applicant, I would totally game it, right? You get the, you get them to, start thinking that they all, are on your side, and and so there's a super gaming that,
You get chummy with one of the faculty members, and
yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think a panel interview is very stressful. It induces so much anxiety, and in this time and culture where we are, where students are so focused on their wellness, I'm not really sure that's really the right or the most comfortable environment to put them in. And so while, I think that's great in some, and it might work really well for some, I don't think here at OCOM that's really what we're looking for. I've done MMIs, and I've also rolled out MMIs on Zoom, so that was also fun. But I loved the situational experiences that you can really get a lot out of information from a short amount of time, but you're not getting to know the applicant, but you're getting to know if they can problem solve, can they critically think, how will they be as a student? So I think it has a lot of pros and cons to that as well. But what we like here is just to get to know people. We like to get to know who our students are and really see if they can fit well. So for us, for the one-on-ones are really just us connecting and having that time just to, tell me about what your struggles were. Tell me about how you learned. Tell me about, your MCAT journey and what's your study skills? How did you learn from that? So I think for us, the one-on-ones are really working out well. We've got so much great positive feedback from all of our applicants on it. So I think we'll continue with that going forward.
And Krista, what feedback are you hearing out there?
Yeah.
Do people like this type of
Yeah,
format?
I think they do. I think it's less pressure speaking one-on-one with someone. Group interviews on my side, obviously preparing for them is a lot more stressful. You have a lot more anxiety coming into it. And then I like that it's 2 20-minute one-on-one interviews with a member of faculty and a member of staff, which funny enough, a student actually after their in-person interview this week voiced that they really enjoyed that because both offer such a unique perspective. So you might be asking as the interviewee one question to a faculty and one to staff and get a completely different perspective from each of them. So I enjoy it. I think it's awesome. And I think the students really like it too. And when I tell them, when I'm trying to get them hyped up, I'm like, it's just like a conversation between you and I. That's truly how it is. So I like it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
What
Yeah.
was your experience, Leo?
And between the 2 interviews, I think honestly I did love it as well. Just like Krista was saying, basically you would be talking to one of the staff members and even just talking about how their day was and stuff like that. And then when you talk to the faculty, you go into what is the school offering you? What's the curriculum like? What are some important questions you want to know about what's going on with the school? So I agree wholeheartedly with the idea of talking about one with staff about like daily life and then one with faculty, what's going on behind the scenes.
I love that.
I'll tell you, I had such a good time, talking with you all today. It was just incredible, to talk about, a topic I really love, which is admissions. And, of course, it's great to have one of our inaugural students here at OCOM to join us today. So before we conclude, anything that anybody wants to discuss or, plug?
Oh, do you want to plug it?
Follow us on Instagram, OCOM_admissions, for all the latest admissions updates.
Excellent. And hopefully one day TikTok.
TikTok
right?
coming soon.
We learned last OCOM podcast episode that we needed to have our own TikTok. So forth
Work in
coming.
progress.
Yeah. So anyway, well, thank you all for coming today, and
Thank you.
it's a pleasure to have you, and thanks for joining us on the OCOM podcast.